Working with the CIA over a decade. On their actual payroll, going on about 5 years. I was born in D.C. Parents moved to Israel when I was a kid. Dual citizenship has its advantages. Yeah, I landed in the Israeli Defense Forces out of university. Did a tour there. After that, the Mossad. That's when I first started working with the CIA. And occasionally, our boss man Adler over there.
So the Call of Duty series has been accused for a long time of just being straight up US military propaganda. And this take is regurgitated by anyone on the left because I feel like most leftists don't play Call of Duty. Now, I am the rare exception. I would say I'm a left-wing person, super left-wing, hate the United States, hate the US military. I'm a communist as well. And I like Call of Duty games, and I've played most of them. I've completed most of the campaigns. The only three I haven't touched are the rebooted Modern Warfare games, because just like the thought of just like rebooting games that are still like hold up very well and just like doing the exact same story is so stupid. But I haven't played them, and I'm pretty certain they'd probably be US propaganda. But I have played all the Black Ops games. I've played all the old Modern Warfare games. I've played Ghosts. I've played Infinite Warfare, which I think is actually the best one. So I played all of these ones, and I am someone who can probably talk about on authority if these games are propaganda for the United States. And I've actually made a video about how, yes, they definitely are propaganda, not just for the United States, but actually for the CIA. But even I was a little surprised when one of the co-founders of Infinity Ward was actually pressured to make a game about a war between Israel and Iran. So I want to talk about this today, and I want to talk about this in relation to Activision, Jeffrey Epstein maybe, and Call of Duty generally. So just here's a story for you. So Chance Glasgow, who used to work at Infinity Ward, co-founder of Call of Duty, he wrote on Twitter after the White House posted a meme about the Iran strikes they're doing and using footage of rebooted Modern Warfare, and he says, "This doesn't surprise me. I remember after Activision took over post-Respawn Formation, there was very awkward pressure from Activision for us to make the next COD about Iran attacking Israel. Luckily, the vast majority of our devs were disgusted by the idea and it got shut down." Someone replying, "Epstein was pushing hard for that narrative," and he replies, "The former CEO of Activision was friends with Epstein." Someone replying about other games, "Terrorist attacks in London and shadow company fighting cartels in Mexico are okay, but Iran attacking Israel is disgusting. My point is that the government would happily use entertainment, including video games, as a way to sway public opinion on major issues. There have been decades of pressure for a war with Iran across multiple administrations. The scenarios you mentioned, not so much." So the CEO of Activision, Bobby Kotick, was friends with Jeffrey Epstein, like really good friends with Jeffrey Epstein. And both these people are, of course, massive supporters of Israel. And if you guys are probably too young, war with Iran has been something the US has been talking about for the longest time. The next target after Iraq in 2003 was Iran. That's what the Bush administration wanted to do afterwards. They wanted to invade and topple the Iranian government. Because the Iraq invasion went so badly, they couldn't actually do that. And they actually turned Iraq into an Iranian proxy pretty much as well. But there was a lot of pressure to do this, and loads of people, like he said, lots of different US governments have been calling for this. But why I was surprised about this is although Call of Duty historically is blatant US military propaganda, Israel has really not featured in the games. The only game that Israel feature in any way is there's a Mossad agent character in Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. Funnily enough, you can choose who to say between him and an MI6 agent. When you're on a mission in Cuba, like, of course I let the Mossad agent be taken by the Cubans, but that is the main one. Like, I don't remember any other Call of Duty game, even the Call of Duty Black Ops 6, which is set in like the Gulf War in the 1990s. I do not remember any other Israeli characters. I don't remember Mossad in any other games apart from one, and I don't remember Israel. So the premise of this game being, I think it was going to be in 2010, that Iran and Israel are at war and you're helping Israel. That even I would say was a step too far for something like Call of Duty. But interestingly, Call of Duty is just Western imperialist propaganda. And I made this video 4 years ago because Activision Blizzard, I don't think these people work here anymore, was actually run by former members of the Bush and Trump White Houses, including the CIA. I want to start with naming these three people who worked for the Bush administration and the Trump administration. So the first one who we're going to focus on the most is Francis F. Townsend, who's the executive vice president for corporate affairs. From 2004 to 2008, Fran served as the Assistant for Homeland Security and Counterterrorism to President George Bush, chairing the Homeland Security Council during a pivotal period for the United States. I like the way they describe someone who was in charge of things like counterterrorism and torture. So let's, talk about her career in the Bush administration. So she was one of the big boosters behind raising the national terror threat level during the Bush's 2004 re-election campaign based on three-year-old evidence, a decision then Homeland Security Chief Tom Ridge later said he was politically pressured into making. The then head of Abu Ghraib prison, where people were tortured, said he felt similarly pressured to increase the amount of intelligence coming out of the interrogations following a visit by Townsend, and we're going to get into that visit. So the next person is Brian Bullatow, and he is the Chief Administrative Officer, Activision Blizzard. Prior to joining the company, Brian served in the government as the Undersecretary of State for Management, and prior to that, as the Chief Operating Officer at the CIA. Before joining the CIA, he worked in private equity, and he actually founded a private company with Mike Pompeo, who of course was the director of the CIA before being the Secretary of State. The one last person, so Grant Dixon has served as our Chief Legal Officer since June 2021. Prior to joining Activision, he served as a Senior Vice President and General Counsel at the Boeing Company. Dixon also served in the White House as Associate Counsel to the President. So this company and the main product they have of Call of Duty was actually run by people who used to work for the CIA and headed by a guy who was friends with Jeffrey Epstein, who was in all likelihood working for Mossad at the time. But I want to just use this video to talk about like a little bit of nuance. So Call of Duty has different kind of games that tackle different things. So I would say actually the worst pro-imperialist propaganda from Call of Duty was the 2007 game Modern Warfare 1. Now, Modern Warfare 1 sees you play as both the US Marines and the SAS. When you're playing as the US Marines, you invade a Gulf country. Their dictator looks very much like Saddam Hussein, and the whole aesthetic is very Iraq war coded. And there's literally just like no nuance given to this country. This Saddam Hussein-like character just overthrows the government, and then you have to take him out, and then he detonates a nuke in the game. It's found out later in the 2011 Modern Warfare 3 that it was actually a Russian ultranationalist that detonated the nuke, but that probably wasn't thought of when this game came out. And the whole vibes of this game is just like total US propaganda. It's basically just regurgitating the images you would have seen on screen, on the news in 2007, and letting you play it as these heroic characters, and the horrible Arab man and the Arab armies, they detonate the nuke on the poor Americans. And there's a lot of stuff to do with Russia in the game as well, but I would say that is actually the worst in terms of like something contemporary, because it was a game tackling contemporary kind of warfare. But I would say if we're actually going to talk about the worst in terms of propaganda, the first Black Ops game is absolutely insane. I actually think a couple of the Black Ops games are insane. And it's weird, they've actually readdressed that a bit lately, because in Black Ops 6, the CIA is kind of the villain. What is interesting about this game, and I'll tell you where it fumbles for me, is actually most of the enemies in the game are not Russian. They're not Iraqi. Iraqis do reoccur in this game as the enemies. They're actually American, which I thought was a nice twist, and I feel a bit let down by the game. So basically, the story of the game is there is a mercenary group that is kind of like come out of nowhere, and it's mainly filled with Americans and Westerners. And it turns out later that this is a group called Pantheon, which have emerged inside the CIA itself. So what this game kind of is like a CIA civil war, and you're trying to stop like these rogue, well, you're technically the rogue CIA group, but you're trying to stop this kind of like offshoot of the CIA from getting a chemical weapon and using it to basically frame the current director of the CIA and take over the CIA from within. And you're kind of tasked to stop that, and the bad group of people. And yeah, the whole game is basically you fighting other Americans who want to do bad. So I thought the game was kind of interesting because for most of the game, you're on the run from the CIA who are hunting you down. So I'm thinking, oh, this is really, really cool. The CIA were bad in Cold War, but ultimately it seemed like their actions were kind of justified by the game, right? But here I am, I'm running from the CIA and I'm fighting Americans, maybe it's saying something interesting about American imperialism, and that's why it fumbles the ending so bad. Is no, it's not a comment on the CIA. You saved the CIA from Pantheon so the CIA can continue doing what it's always done, right? So essentially you have saved the CIA from being overthrown by another group within the CIA. And there's no real commentary about the CIA being bad after that. It's just simply this group called Pantheon that are bad. The offshoot, the rogue CIA, that's bad. But the standard CIA guys, now they're actually pretty cool. They're pretty cool. And in Black Ops Cold War, the kind of morality of the CIA, I don't think it's necessarily painting them in a good light.
Interrogation didn't work with you, but thanks to MK Ultra's research, we had a backup plan. If you believed you were someone else, we could lead you to a place where you'd give everything up. I realize you probably hate us right now, what we've done to you. I just need you to fully understand the stakes here. What you do right now is not about me, it's not about you, it's about millions of other fucking people. It's about stopping someone who, in the end, has no true allegiance to anyone other than himself.
But Black Ops 1 is crazy. Like the how fucking racist and dehumanizing it is to the Vietnamese in the game is just like playing it like recently is fucking insane. It's just like these Vietnamese all just like their tactics are crazy. They're running to gunfire. You're literally playing as some of the worst members of the, you know, this is like, even for the CIA, this time period in this country and in Southeast Asia is like the darkest chapter of the CIA's history. And you're playing it like you're some sort of action hero. And the Vietnamese actually deserve all this shit because they're working with the Soviet Union. It's just absolutely crazy propaganda. But I guess that's just what like 2010 was like. And that's why it's funny, because the 2010 game, they were pressured to make it about Israel, but they instead made it about the CIA in the first Cold War. So it just became like anti-communist propaganda rather than pro-Zionist propaganda. But in that, pretty much is pro-Zionist propaganda anyway. So in my opinion, that's the absolute like worst one. And I do think Call of Duty's popularity is responsible for helping more people get recruited in the military. And one thing I didn't know until recently is how much video games actually translate to skill in terms of shooting a gun.
Where were you before Foxhound? Delta Force?
I was part of the Army's Force 21 trials.
Force 21? That's about tactical IT deployment, right? Any field experience?
No, not really.
So this is your first.
I've had extensive training, the kind that's indistinguishable from the real thing.
Like what?
Sneaking mission 60, weapons 80, advanced,
VR, huh?
but realistic in every way.
A virtual grunt of the digital age, that's just great.
That's far more effective than live exercises.
You don't get injured in VR, do you? Every year, a few soldiers die in field exercises.
There's pain sensation in VR and even a sense of reality and urgency. The only difference is it isn't actually happening.
That's the way they want you to think, to remove you from the fear that goes with battle situations. War is a video game. What better way to raise the ultimate soldier?
Because I'd never shot a gun before in my life until last year. And I love video games. I play a lot of shooters. I have good hand-eye coordination generally from playing football. Like, I am good at playing football, and I'd say if you watch some of the footage of me playing something I'm probably best at is like long-range passing. And I don't think, if you don't play football, you can't appreciate this. The way I pass it is like a very certain way. It's like you kind of cut it just to put a certain amount of height on it where it goes up and comes down pretty quickly. So I'm not saying I'm someone who has bad hand-eye coordination, but I do sincerely think me playing games like Call of Duty, Battlefield, and The Last of Us made me really good at shooting a gun before I'd ever shot a gun. So when I went shooting for a stag do, we had like 30 like clay pigeons, and again, never shot a gun. I came second out of the whole group with people who had shotguns before, and I hit like 22 out of 30.
The first two were just first shot and then like
I couldn't even believe it. But then the theory of shooting a gun in these games translated so well to actually shooting a gun in real life. And I actually attribute games like Call of Duty for getting me interested in like history and weapons and stuff. And that led me, I think, in part to becoming a leftist. But you can see why so many people play Call of Duty, then go watch like gun YouTubers who are all like far right, go down this rabbit hole and fetishize the military so much that they actually want to go and join the military. And I honestly think there is a pipeline there. I know people say like violent video games don't make you more violent, and maybe they don't psychologically, but I do think US propaganda through video games and you like digitally getting to like reenact these battles, I think is a big part and will get people kind of hooked into that culture and thinking it's something they might want to do, especially when you frame it in a certain way. Like if you play a military game like, let's say, Brothers in Arms Hell's Highway, super underrated game. If you've never played this, it holds up very well. But it's one of the few first-person shooters that actually deals with the psychological side of fighting in war and like PTSD and stuff.
Now this looks familiar. It would appear we have much more in common than you'd originally thought. Bulletproof Matt Baker, reduced to tears at the loss of a friend.
It's not the same.
Well, that's the rub, isn't it? It is the same. You stand, knees buckling under the weight of your own guilt. You are history repeating itself.
I'm still alive. That's more than I can say for you.
Are you? There's not much to say about me, Matthew. I was weak and frail and was crushed by a secret you told me to keep.
I was protecting you.
Is this the same protection you offered Frankie? He trusted in you, Matthew. Much as the others did. But they aren't here either. Exactly how much is your protection worth?
Stop. Please.
The US war in France against the Germans was, most people can agree, an actual good thing. And this is the game that chooses to deal with all these complex things. So after you play this game, you wouldn't be itching to join the military to, you know, reenact the glory of the Second World War, because you're just like, damn, that was terrible. And all these things that happen in the game to your character, all these like things he keeps seeing and like all this PTSD stuff, that's very applicable to any war scenario. Where in Call of Duty, it's just like, nah, you're awesome, you're great, you can single-handedly save the world, and the US military is a force for good in the world. And it's more like subtle propaganda, but I think it's more effective propaganda because unlike movies, which maybe have a bigger imprint on like general culture, video games are very like, you have a very intimate connection through playing them. And let's use another example. If you play The Last of Us 2, I don't think anyone's going to play The Last of Us 2 and come away thinking, I want to shoot people in real life, because when you shoot people in that game, not only is it super graphic, like probably the most graphic I've ever seen in a video game in terms of the gore, these people will scream, like just the most disturbing screams, and they'll call out to their friends, and their friends will call out to them, and their friends will like lament their deaths like by name. It's very, very disturbing, and one of the better uses of the medium to make you horrified by violence. But Call of Duty doesn't have stuff like that, and Call of Duty doesn't make you feel horrified by violence. In fact, it just makes you enjoy it. And I would say that's the hard thing about criticizing Call of Duty, because the Black Ops game I'm talking about from 2010, I think that is one of the best first-person shooter campaigns in terms of just like the level design and just the story and how it works and stuff. And there's a one level in the Kowloon walled city, and I just think this is one of the best first-person shooter levels I've ever played. It's just so well designed. It's such a great setting, such a unique setting. How claustrophobic it is. They've done such a good job with that level. And that's the hard thing with video games, is like, it's art in multiple ways. It's art in maybe the story, the visuals, the actual art style, or it can be art in the way it plays and the way the levels are designed. And I think this is a great example of why it's hard to criticize these things, and why someone like myself can both like be disgusted by the depiction of certain groups, but also actually enjoy the game on its own merits and stuff. But yeah, Call of Duty being propaganda for the US, nothing new. It will probably continue to be propaganda for the US. I will say though, if for some reason you want to give Call of Duty a chance upon watching this video, and you have an Xbox where you can play all of them, play Call of Duty World at War. Again, like Brothers in Arms, actually kind of deals with how horrifying conflict can be through the use of gore and its setting. Like, you play as the Soviet Union fighting the Germans, and you fight as the American Marines in the Pacific Theater. And if you want one that is just like legit good and probably not as problematic, Infinite Warfare is set in the future. It's like a space game. Very, very good story. One of the guys who made Uncharted 2 did the story. I just think it's like the best Call of Duty campaign. And yeah, so go play them if you are interested in any of these. And go play Brothers in Arms, Hell's Highway, or the original ones on the PS2. They're also very good. If you actually want good games that depict war in a way that isn't like just celebrating the violence. So that's it for the video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. And if you made it this far, thank you for watching.